Good afternoon and welcome to the little polytunnel. What I want to do today is I'm going to try something a little bit different. I did this last year, but I did it a little bit later on in the season, and I had a few problems which I'll discuss in a minute. But what I'm going to do today is around about 3/4 of the way through November, still relatively mild. I'm going to plant up some leeks for next year. The variety I've got is Musselburgh leeks, and they're from a company called Premier Seeds Direct, and I think they're mainly an eBay based company. But I don't know if you can see that. That's the seeds we're planting today, or sowing today. Okay, so in the winter time, this little polytunnel, because it's quite easy to heat and it doesn't take long to heat up, becomes the winter nursery. Hence the chilies are in here. There'll be a few other plants I'm going to be bringing in here as well, and then I have a little paraffin heater, and it just ticks it over the winter. These are going to live in here as well. Now, what I'm using is one of these polystyrene crates, and you can get these from like your fishmonger. They normally would give them away because they can't really do much else with them, but they're fantastic for growing stuff in, especially over winter. The polystyrene insulates the soil or the media, compost, whatever it is you've got in there, and then you can put a lid over the top, and that will sit there quite happily all winter. Now, last year when I'd done this, it was around about sort of January time in the sort of heated polytunnel, and they all started to grow and germinated very, very nicely, and then it will come to a grinding halt. And I thought, well, what's going on here? Why are they doing that? Well, a bit of a learning curve for me, because I was using this stuff, okay, and that is a very fine, almost sort of fuzzy like compost, and it's specifically for just sowing seeds in. It turns out it's hardly got any real nutrient in it whatsoever. So, I mean, you can see the difference. So basically, with seeds, they have obviously their own seed shell, and inside that there's the plant itself once it's germinated, and then there's a food source, okay, and that initial food source for seeds helps them just develop them first couple of leaves, or the primary leaves, and get those first initial roots down. As soon as it's done that, it would have exhausted the food source, and then it needs roots to go out and find other food. There was nothing in it. So everything come to a grinding halt, and I was scratching my head thinking, what's going on here? So then I had to apply some fertiliser and feed over the top, and it brought it all back to life, and it turned out everything was okay. But the advantage of doing it now, this time of year, is that it gives me a really good head start. So when others on the site were just starting to sow theirs in sort of blocks about this size on the plot or in the garden, because that's all you need, densely sow it, they'll all grow up in a tightly packed sort of unit, and then you can dig your spade in and just break off and separate the individual leeks ready to plant out into their respective holes. But doing it like this, I've got them in here. I can control the environment. I can control how much moisture they've got. They're not going to be subjected to any hard frost or snow, and they'll be already nice sort of pencil thickness at least for early spring, ready to plant straight out. So in a box like this, last year I'd done 200 leeks. So we're going to just, in here there's about 1,500 seeds, so there's no way I'm going to need all of those. Alright. I've got to try and get into it. They do have very good packaging. It's all foil sealed. This is going to be an absolute... There we go. Right, I don't want all of them. Don't have to be too fussy about this. They really are tiny. They always remind me, leek seeds, of like little grains of coal. They look just like it. Right, so all I'm going to do is just sprinkle over a few of these leek seeds. Now this compost I'm using now, it come from one of these, the green commercial green waste disposal facilities, and then they pile it up into huge, great big piles. A lot of heat's generated, it breaks down, and they can turn green foliage, wood chip and all sorts into usable compost within weeks. It's incredible, really. Now the only disadvantage with that is that sort of compost, even the stuff you get at your local tip, because they do exactly the same, can be quite acidic. And that's because a lot of people get rid of fir tree cuttings like the Lelandi, if I pronounce that right. I never can. They get rid of that sort of thing, pine needles, etc., and that can make the compost quite acidic. So it's always worth going up, asking them for a sample. They'll give you a sample if they want to sell it, and then you can get a little meter that you just pop in, and it tests the pH. This is up to UK standard, and that's got a pH of 7, perfect. But I'm hoping, because it's got a lot more in it than this stuff, which seems to be very refined, there's going to be plenty of food in here. And I've got, you know, a lot more hope for this than I did last year, even though I did manage to do it, and you know, the leeks did come out alright. But this year I just want them to be a little bit earlier, a little bit fatter, and a little bit more ready to go planting out. So right, now then, where's the top? Right, so that's my seeds in. I'm quite happy, I've got plenty in there. I might do just a few more for good measure. Why not? Oh no, not that many. There'll be like a mini forest in there. That'll do. So, not going to bother counting them. Just a couple there for good luck and good measure. Alright. Brilliant. Another good tip with these, if you're doing broad beans, right, you can start them in 3-inch pots, fill that up with your broad beans, put a lid on it, a glass lid, okay, mice can't get in. Now they have got little tiny drainage holes each corner, so that's another use, and although I have already planted mine out this year, I've let them out for the elements, but I did do that last year, it worked absolutely wonderfully, so I was quite pleased with that. Right, seeds are in, a few handfuls of this, just a very light covering over the top, and I suppose this compost has got to be 2.5 to 3 inches deep, and the reason I want that is because last year I did notice that the root structures on the leeks, they went right the way down to the bottom, and they just filled the whole thing up. Another good reason for it is obviously in here, even in the winter, it gets quite warm, and the thicker this is, the more heat it's going to retain. When you put the lid on, condensation forms on the bottom of the glass, it drips back down, and it basically turns into a self-watering unit. So once it has had its first initial watering, it's, you know, the watering after that is very minimal. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a little rub over with my hands, make sure everything's covered. Beautiful. Right, slight firm down, just with the hand, not too hard, doesn't have to be hard. Now, I'm expecting these to germinate within about 2 weeks, and then I shall leave them in here. I shall probably check them once every fortnight, maybe 3 weeks, just put a meter in just to test how damp this soil is. Just needs to be damp, not wet, not soaking, but for the first watering you want it absolutely dripping wet, so soak it. So we'll get some of this, and that means that the water's all the way down to the bottom, and again this will help this initial self-watering process. I'm not expecting any frost, we're right down south, frost is probably a few weeks away. And any excess water is going to drain out of those holes. Alright, I think that'll probably do it. Fabulous. Right, last job, put the lid on. Now this is basically an old double glazing panel. Again, you can go to your local glaziers and they'll have loads of these kicking about. That's it, job done, leave it. And then obviously when the little leeks get to about so big, they'll hit the bottom of the glass, and that's the time to take the glass off. They'll be hardy enough to survive any sort of cold or temperature by then. What was the last thing? Oh yeah, you'll know. You just keep an eye on them. Alright, make sure that they're all looking okay and everything else like that. If the tips do die off, don't worry, that's quite normal, they'll come back. That first shoot that they put up is not going to be the finished leaf or the primary leaves. They'll put little side ones out each side, and they're the ones that will continue on and grow. I thought I'd just give you a quick update on how the leeks are doing. About 3 weeks ago, I suppose, I sowed all my my leeks for next year, and lo and behold, they've all come up. So let's have a little look at those. And there they are, beautiful. Nice little seedlings coming up. Do you remember I said to you possibly, I don't know if I did or not, but just some of the tips of these, they tend to sort of like burn off. Don't worry about that, that's absolutely fine. It happened to me last year as well. We've had no frost yet at all. It's been exceptionally mild. We're still in double figures, in fact. And you can see that like some of these are quite tall, and just some of them, like here, you can see that. Some of them are just popping up. So yeah, very, very pleased with that. And that'll do me proud for next year. One disappointing thing though is I haven't been over here for a little while. This little polytunnel is extremely damp. It's just absolutely full of condensation, and that has pretty much destroyed my chilies. They're not looking very healthy. As you can see, there's a lot of this sort of mold forming on the tips. I mean, this side is pretty much, this one might be okay. The rest of them, the ones that have all gone brown, I think they're pretty much spent. Similar story over this side, although the pepper dew, this one and this one, they seem to be doing okay, but for this old chap here, I think the days are over. It's gone, and I think that's basically because it is so damp in here. The back window there's closed off as well, so there's not really been any ventilation to dry it out in here. What I really should have done was move this lot over into the big polytunnel where there's better ventilation and it's a lot drier in there. I think that would have helped it. But anyway, we live and learn, and I shall be probably sowing up some new seeds anyway very, very soon for next year's chili crop. But yeah, just thought I'd give you a little update just to show you how well they've done. They were under glass. I will probably leave them under the glass for another week or two, and then I'll remove the glass, and that's it. It's done its job. It's germinated them, or assisted the germination process. But while I've still got lots of little ones still popping up like that, you know, I'm going to just make sure it's protected just in case we do get that sharp frost one evening. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. Do come across and like the Facebook page. That's the quickest way to find out about all what us crazy gang are up to. We publish everything through that, and there'll be a link below in the video. So from me, until next time, see you soon.